All right, welcome. Hello, everyone.
Can't wait to chat about this book with Britt and Maze.
It's been in my calendar for a few weeks and I've been really looking forward to this.
Hello, welcome back. We're reviewing the book, The Four Agreements. It's actually a really close book to my heart. When I was 17, I was in a kids' refuge, and my youth worker gave me this book, but she didn't give it to me in a book. She gave it to me in an audio because I couldn't, pay attention. So I heard. It took me about 2 months to actually get through the whole audio, and then when I did, my whole life changed since that book. I mean, obviously not. It was just like click your finger, but that's when I had like that moment of like the aha moment. So I'm not going to get emotional, but it's like really, really touches my heart. It's a beautiful book. And I always recommend it to everybody. I think everyone maybe in their lifetime should definitely have a read of this book. If you're spiritual, religious, any type of whatever you relate with, I think this kind of relates to all kind of type of humans or humanity. If someone was to ask you, okay, you've read this book, describe it. I mean, it's going to be hard, but describe it in one word or one sentence.
I think
it's really hard.
It's hard, hey, yeah.
I would probably actually go with simplicity.
Yep.
Like really paring it back to the raw basics. And one of my questions was going to be, is it too simple? Is it too straightforward or not? But yeah, what do you guys think?
I think it kind of goes around kindness as well. Like the word, the not making assumptions, the don't take things personally. It kind of all comes back around to kindness. And that like kind of trusting the process of what's going on around you as well.
Exactly.
And I love like what he wrote in there was like, he started off like, well, the whole book kind of deconstructs the reality of society that we live in today. And I loved how it's first started off with, at the start, with we are conditioned in a certain way. That's through like our parents and how we've grown up. And, seeking that validation, the good girl, bad girl. And, like we're always wanting that. So that was... And it's so simple. He really like deconstructed something he deconstructed what we live in reality and what actually causes us so much more harm and self-hatred that we inflict on ourselves that we don't need to do. And that's been through like our insecurities and our traumas or whatever we've been through or what we've grown up with. And on top of what society has said what we need to do and what not to do. And then on top of that, our parents and how we've grown up and the ideas they thought was right or wrong. But there isn't, in this, it's more about not right or wrong. It's about you. What do you think? That's what I love about this book. It's not telling you this is the right thing or this is the wrong thing. It's more like these are the tools that will help you to whatever you believe in. This will help you to find that freedom, that like self-freedom, and like it, and that's what I loved about it. Because as humans,
even just looking up. Sorry.
No. Please take it away.
When it was written like in '97, which is kind of before our millennial culture of everyone gets a trophy and that sort of thing. Because I kind of thought like, was this written for our generation, saying like you have this need to be perfect, this need for validation all the time. Really kind of fits with the idea of what a millennial is. Like we can't handle not getting that validation and not getting that gold brownie point from your parents.
Absolutely.
But it was kind of written before that. So it was also like relevant then too.
We were talking about that earlier, and that's this really interesting part. It was written, it's based off of Toltec wisdom, Toltec people, which were, they ruled, I think it was Mexico. I believe it was central Mexico. And it was like between the 10th and the 12th century. So it was like a good 1,000 years ago that this was written. And it's still
if not more now.
Yeah, hits home.
Like,
Exactly. And that's why he really deconstructs the reality of our society that we live in now, even though it was written 1,000 years ago. So it's so interesting to see that something that was written so long ago still it fits into our society. So it's a pattern that humans have been doing for a long time, and we still do. And we live in a very quick, chaotic world that, you know, it is sometimes hard to, you know, implement these 4 agreements when you're surrounded by people who not impeccable with their word. They do make assumptions. They do take things personal, and people are not doing their best. And then, you realize like, oh wow, okay, the people even around me are like a mirror image of what I'm doing. So then you start to like realize everything around you is a mirror effect.
I think to me, this book really like mirrored self-sufficiency to me.
Yeah.
Like I would speak, if there's any sort of like being secure in yourself, trusting yourself, you know, just all around spiritually, physically, mentally, just sealing that idea of being self-sufficient and trusting who you are. Because in like even the idea of like when something that really hit me in the book was when he was like, humans are the only animals or living things in this world that exist unforgiven. Like how we just like, you know, we'll remind people of the things they've done in the past. We just don't forgive them. We have a reason to just stay angry and just not move on.
Yeah, we love suffering.
Yeah, that's what I mean. It's so we inflict
it.
so much pain on ourselves that like that's not needed. And that's why he like gives you those 4 agreements to help you go, okay, like they're all tied together, and it's like be impeccable with your words. So, and as we're all talking about, it's so important to be mindful with that, and that's like the first agreement to have with yourself. That's why he wrote it first, because that's how you start with the first agreement, with the be impeccable with your word. What did you take away from that?
I don't know. It's kind of opened up like, because I don't know how to explain this, but it was sort of revealing to me. It was because, you know, when I read books like this, I relate myself to what they're saying. I try to personalize it. And so it was revealing to me in certain situations that I've been through. Like I would say to myself, if I had known this when I was younger, maybe, you know, I would have dealt with this issue different or that issue different. And like, but it made me realize that I'm growing, and I should just take from this what I can and just really put it into my life and practice.
Absolutely. Yeah. What about you, Britt?
Yeah, I found that practice really interesting too. So I read each chapter on a different day. So I kind of went to work that day and really, you know, thought about the chapter that I'd read and tried to implement some of those things. And in the first chapter about being impeccable with your word, in there, he talks about this idea of like black magic and white magic and how your word has such an impact on the people you talk to. And like that really stuck with me. So there were certain conversations I was having that, you know, I really made an effort to like be really kind and be really truthful and really clear. And every interaction I walked away from in a really positive light. And then you also have those thoughts that are like, I could say something right now that would just ruin your day. Yeah. And it's that easy. Yeah. And that idea of that like black magic sort of thing coming out of it, like the idea of the magic I found a bit strange, but like as you read it, you can kind of see where that influence comes in and where that like that power comes in, which is really cool. So it's like the power of your word. I'd never thought about that before. And I found that really interesting in that chapter.
Yeah, because it's so important. And like I 100%, I'm glad you touched on that. And like you realize how powerful your word is. And even not just to other people, to yourself, like knowing to be kinder to yourself, because I find myself, I can be so hard on myself and I can say really harsh things, and then it's not constructive, and I have to be mindful with my word. To others, of course, it's really important, but even to ourselves, and it starts with ourselves as well. To the second agreement, don't make assumptions. I love that one.
Don't make assumptions.
I love that one. What do you think, Britt? What did you take away from that one?
I find this one the toughest one out of all four, because I'm constantly making assumptions. I caught myself last week saying, I assume, like multiple times.
Yeah.
And then every time I said it, I was like, crap, don't make assumptions.
Yeah.
But it's just, it makes life so much easier when you just assume things. Like in my job, like it's events management. If I stopped and asked every single person what they actually wanted, like nothing would ever get done. So I assume constantly for things. And I do get bit in the ass occasionally, but most of the time, like it works out. So this one I found really tough to implement throughout the week because like I just felt so time poor that I had to make assumptions.
Yep.
But yeah, I don't know. This one I really, really struggled with. But I understand
I had the same.
why you need to not make assumptions.
Yeah, totally. I had the same with this one. That was the hardest one.
Yeah.
And I found it out of the 4 agreements, you kind of were like, okay, I can tick that one off. Like I do that pretty good. I don't need to worry about that. This one, I was like, yeah, that one needs work. But I guess everyone has a different take on what agreement was the tough one.
Yeah.
Agreed. Agreed. Yes,
I found this one. Sorry. This one a bit like for me, like, oh yeah, this validates me so much because like I don't give a fuck about a lot of things. And it's not that I don't care. It's just I'm just willing to be like, oh, okay, done, you know. So it validated a lot of my insecure, like not giving a shit vibes. Okay. And I was like, oh, great. Yeah.
That's awesome. I'm glad they did that for you.
Give me some of that.
I was like, thank God, yes.
And that's what I really good point. It also validates a lot of the things that you would already do and know, but then it tweaks some of the other things, and then it's like the scales. You're like, okay, I can do this, but you know I can't do that, and I feel like I need to do more work on this. It's not you can't do things. You just need a bit more work and tweaking with things and fizzle through the agreements. And for me, don't make assumptions is like a big one, because you know you grow up with a society, you know, we've all grown up in a society where we do make assumptions. Like, well, how is that person? Like when someone looks at you, we learn through patterns. So we're always like looking through patterns and what's this person through like trying to say to me, even through their language or through their body language, even though they might have not said anything to you, just through their body language, we're making assumptions. I had to learn that the hard way and realizing that, you know, I don't need to always pick up on people's patterns or if they're saying something to me, and it's been a wake-up call for me for the past 5 years, really. So I find not making assumptions it is a struggle. You all like highlighted how hard it is because we live in a society where you're always wanting to make assumptions. It's like, does this person like me? Is that, you know, if someone's doing something, is that the right thing? Am I doing the right thing? Is, you know, we're always seeking that validation from what he talked about in the first part of the book was we're always seeking that validation. So it goes back to, it all ties together. You just realize of like, oh, wow, okay. It's all like they're patterns that tie in together.
How he was saying like, it's okay to ask questions. I've always been that person that has just been so like, you need to give me the DL, like to the deepest DL you could possibly give me when you're explaining things to me or talking to me. I need to visualize that. And I've always like been ashamed of, you know, like I felt the shame, but I didn't let it stop me. But like I would always be in my mind constantly thinking of how I reacted in a situation, what I said in a situation. Oh, my English wasn't as great. Oh, maybe I shouldn't have been as flamboyant. And like just reading that was just like, anybody who looks at me, talks to me, if they want to judge me, that's on them. Like that is a reflection of who they are. So if my light is too bright, I'm not like, don't dim it just so someone else can shine, you know?
Yeah, absolutely.
Like it was just like, it validated so much worry and just relieved me of like so much anxiety, if I should say. Yeah. So it was very beautiful. And the way he just like writes his thing.
He simplifies
everything.
Like
reading my mind.
Yeah, he simplifies it. He literally he makes it easy to read. Like, did you find that? That it's just much more easier to read. Third one is don't take anything personally.
Don't take anything personally.
Don't
Is that the
take
third
anything
one?
personally.
That's the third one. Yes.
Personally.
What do
third
you
one?
think, Britt?
I mean, this one's tough too. Like
Yeah.
to a certain low level, every day you can be like, yeah, I won't take it personally. But like he uses an example in the book that's like, even when someone has a gun to your head, don't take it personally. It's like,
I was gonna
that
ask
would be
about.
tough
I was
to
gonna
take
ask about that
personally.
one too. I was like, that's a bit far, maybe.
It's like how many meditation, how many hours of meditation are you doing to do that? Because I don't think I'd be able to have someone to my gut.
Yeah, I go with the lowest amount of meditation possible, which is 0. So I think I'm on the right track.
Don't take anything personally.
I remember doing this like training course that was like how to deal with like bad customers and anger and all that sort of stuff when someone is like having a go at you, like how you deal with it. And at the end of the whole thing, it was basically like the only way you can deal with it like mentally and like getting through it is just to pity that person.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's like quite a mean, blunt way of putting it, but that kind of comes around to this. It's like you can't take anything personally because at the end of the day, that person is also, you have no idea what they're going through. You have no idea what journey they've come to get to here. And if you've just been like the straw that broke the camel's back, like that's just unlucky on you.
Yep.
And so I really get the whole don't take things personally thing because like they're right. You can't control what other people believe or think about you and stuff like that. And the only thing you can do is go back to number one and just be impeccable with your word and do good and
don't
be
make
the best
assumptions.
you can be in front of that person.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yes.
What about you, Donna?
Preach. To me, this one is, I think this is my difficult one because I am the personal queen. Even when I try not to be, I'm just like, oh my gosh, like he doesn't like me. Like, I just like, it also comes back from like, the insecurities that I do have. And then like when I see something that it might not even be a trigger, it's just like it opens, like it trigger technically.
It opens wounds.
Activates this insecurity. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so like even without thinking, I will just take it personally. And then I realize down the line that, it is my fault. It's because I've been going through all this. And whether it's fear that stopped me from sharing my feelings, I'm here now. And I need to just wake the fuck up and tell myself, girl, like, grow up.
Don't take anything personally is a really there's so much to it. I feel like there's layers. I mean, they all have layers, but this one specifically has layers where I also find when you do take things personally, you're having a victim mentality, and we're taught to, it's like, if someone gives you feedback, it's like, oh my God, me. Like, even though you don't mean it, even though it's subconscious, it's like you don't even realize you're having a victim mentality, but it is, because you're always, you're gonna always think it's an attack, and you're always the victim when that's not necessarily what's happening. Like I was talking about, if someone gives you feedback or like they don't like your art or whatnot, it's not necessarily. It's not you. That's not the truth of who you are unless you want it to be that truth. And if it's up to you then to go, okay, I'm going to take this and make it my truth or not. So if it triggers something, there's obviously something to work on. But then if you know that's not the truth, you move. But again, we pick up on patterns. And I was talking about how everybody picks up on, a certain body language, but at the end of the day, everyone has their own reality of what a certain body language might mean. So to somebody, this, they might be nodding and, they're agreeing, but someone might be just, trying to, just not really agreeing and they disagree. You never know. So that's why if you make assumptions on that, then you're going to take things personally. So it all ties in together.
I'm a big nodder. I'm just nodding because I understand.
Yeah.
I agree all the time, but I'm always just like,
I love that.
I love it.
You talked about the extremes earlier. Do you think that this one was the one I was like, well, there's part of me that doesn't agree with it in that it's sometimes good to take things personally in a sense of like changing and growing as a person and accepting feedback, which as a film guy and editor, like you kind of have to take that personally in a way so you can develop. Did you guys have that sort of aspect at all?
I can
guess that
see that.
feedback isn't. Sorry, I was just going to say, I guess that feedback isn't necessarily on your character, though.
Yeah.
That
No,
judgment.
it's not personal.
and
Yeah.
That's literally what I was about to say is like I can see your point of view and it is a personal thing coming to you, but it's not on who you are. Yes, it's something. That's why I was saying you can like take it and they can give you feedback. If you trigger something in you and you feel like there's something from that you can actually take on, you're like, okay, that's actually something interesting. I'm not going to take it personal. It's not like you're trying to attack me. It's like you're giving me feedback. Okay, I'll either take it in a constructive way, or that's going back to being impeccable with your word. So if someone came at you with, aggressively, or they like, being hateful, they're obviously being hateful. So you don't take it personal. But even though they might give you a feedback that you agree with and you're like, oh, okay, I can, improve with that. That's constructive feedback. And if someone wants to make that a personality trait of who you are or like attack you for that, then that's
on them.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that's where the don't take things personally part. So it's not a reflection of who you are at the end of the day. It's whatever they say, it's on them. To the fourth agreement, always do your best. What do we think about that one?
He's basically said how doing your best, like when you're tired, when you're sleepy, when you're drunk, whatever different states of mind that you're in, definitely reflects what your best is at that point. And that gave me, I was like, wow, I never thought of that. I always wanted to do like 156,000% every single time. Like,
and then you go to burnout.
How I feel.
Then you'll end up in burnout, and that defeats the whole purpose of doing your best.
Exactly, but your best can be in multiple things. Your best can be in anything. You just need to understand where your body's at and where your mind's at. 100%. And even these things sound so cliche, but it's like he just breaks it down in a way that you can internalize it, like really receive the energy.
Absolutely.
And yeah, it was really, I love this one. And I haven't yet finished. That was the last chapter I got to. So I just can't wait to see how he closes the whole thing.
Amazing. How about you, Britt?
Yeah.
The always do your best one, I was like, oh, easy, I got that in the bag.
Yeah.
Like, I'm always trying my best for things. But it kind of like comes around at the start. He talks about like with the way we've been conditioned and what do they call it? Like our domestication or whatever.
Yeah.
That we've like created this vision of perfection that not even we can ever achieve to. And I feel like that's where that kind of came back into this chapter a bit for me, because like I have created this vision of perfection for myself that I hold myself to like extremely high standards. And so I'm constantly trying to do my best and I always fall short to what I believe is actually my best. And so that's kind of not being very like impeccable with myself either.
Yep.
So that was kind of a weird one where it's like, I feel like I've achieved it, but I've actually gone to the point where me achieving it is detrimental to then continuing forward with things. I don't know. This one was a weird one too.
Yeah, because you're like, and that he touches base on that because you're both describing burnout, because we as humans, it's like we always think we have to do, we've normalized, or we've made it like you always have to capitalize, and even off your hobbies you have to always make money off everything, you always have to maximize everything, and that's actually not realistic. It can be, but some people have done that, but it takes you to burnout, and then eventually you don't know what you want to enjoy anymore, and it's all work, and so that's why you got to differentiate. But doing your best is not even at work, it's even doing your best with being impeccable with your word. It's doing your best with not making assumptions. It's doing your best with not taking anything personally. And it's also doing your best at doing your best. So like it ties all of the three agreements to that. And that's why I loved it at the end.
So it's not hashtag hustle girl boss 2.0.
No, that's what I was at. It's like not just like, oh, I'm hustling, I'm making money, bank, and like let me work, like how much jobs can I get, how much, what can I get more? It's actually focusing on yourself, and then burnout is even causes you more problems. And then that's why you got to sort of sit with every single agreement and make an agreement with that, because as soon as the sort of the scales out, you start to notice where the gaps are that you need to work on. It's so interesting. I just absolutely love it. It's just like a little puzzle piece for me. I'm like, oh yeah, I see where I'm going.
To me, immediately the first thing I thought about, like, there's a point you made about how it's not just about work, it's about like everything, you know, how much, like, to me, I've always told myself, like, I want to learn how to just be at peace with myself and just be where, you know, just not worry so much about the outside world, just worry about me growing and evolving.
Yeah.
And it kind of gave me a chance to reflect on that journey and how far I've come. So it was such a peaceful last agreement, because I was like, oh my gosh, like, you know, I have to not take things personally, I have to be impeccable with my word. Not like I have to be, but like for my own good, I should be. And then like, what was the other one? Don't make assumptions. You know, these things are all like, I have to think and then act, you know, because I'm breaking my habits.
Yep.
But with this one, it's just like, it's like a breath of fresh air. Like, just do your best. Like, do what you can do. Like, you know, just do it. Like, there's no stress. You don't have to be the Einstein of the 4 agreements tomorrow. Just
start.
Chill and take each day.
Yeah. Just baby steps. Just start with them and just like sit down with yourself and journal. Like, you know, like, am I not being impeccable with my word? Am I not speaking my truth? Am I making more assumptions and that's causing me more heartache in my life?
I really love the idea of unlearning things as well. And this book kind of gives you that permission. Like, I wrote it down because I thought it was funny, but he has a line that just says, I want you to forget everything you have learned in your entire life.
Yeah, literally.
It's like, okay, cool. And then just remember these 4 agreements. Like, unlearning is just such a big thing to realize in your adult life, that it's something you can do and it's something you're allowed to do.
100%. And the thing is, like, you can completely destruct something a lot easier, but healing is a lot harder. So that's why when you unlearn, you're also healing. You're healing all those things that you've learned, and you're like, oh, okay, wow, okay. Then you've got this burden on your shoulder, and you're like, oh, this is just so heavy. And then when you release, you're like, oh, okay, this is just so much easier, and this is just, life is so much smoother than me latching onto the idea of who I should be. Because we're just so fixated as like, this is probably who I am, and like and anybody who doesn't allow you to grow and goes, oh, but you've changed, but like, that's what happens. People change, and that's why, you know, people either change with you and they grow, or else, you know, like it's fine. But that's the beauty about it, is growth. And like, if you see your friends and family, people around you changing and you see them, you know, growing, you know, doing their best, and they are changing, trying to do their best in life, then, you know, either be on that journey, or if you don't understand it, take a step back and allow them to just go on that journey, because, you know, it's so important to hold space for that and hold space for people that wanting to do that, and the more you do that, you'll start to attract people who are on that level. What's your last take on the whole book?
Your key takeaway.
Ooh, I'm probably going to have an unpopular opinion here.
No, we love that.
I'm not spiritual in any way, and I'm not a religious person either. So I find books like this, where they talk about a god or like the dream and all that sort of stuff, I find that really challenging, because I'm very much like an everyday logistics, what's here and now person. I haven't delved enough into mindfulness or meaning of life at all. So for me, at the start, he talks about God, but then has this caveat of like, sorry, my dog is here, this caveat of like, you can have any sort of God, it's not a specific God. But then later on in the book, it kind of forgets that, and he really just talks about God. And for me, it's really, really hard to remove the idea of old man in the sky whenever I read the word God, and that immediately kind of takes me out of these books quite frequently. But like I loved the agreements and I loved the messaging behind them and things like that. But I guess the author himself is one that I probably struggled with a little bit.
Yep. And
Yeah, I agree.
there was that part that just, and I remember when I read it, it changed over the years. And when I read it when I was 17, that triggered something in me because at that time I was, you know, I was Muslim and I was, you know, I was in that thing where I was, you know, in searching like what is there more out there? What do I want to learn more? And I didn't necessarily believe in the whole idea of, you know, God, you know, being the man up there somewhere in the sky that's looking down upon us. I just still don't agree with it. And over the years, I mean, and he did touch base that, you know, you make your, you know, everyone has their own God. And that's why when over the years when I read it multiple times, I realized what he was trying to say, that, you know, like it's because he was talking about his God and he was just trying to explain. He just said, because God is the word God or the idea of God is, for me, it's an expression. So people over time, humans express God in a different way. So for me, I feel like God, or that, you know, the higher self or your higher self or that source or that inner light, I feel like we can find that within ourselves, and that inner voice is, you know, a higher self guiding us. That's what I believe in. I don't necessarily believe there's a God out there, you know, controlling things or telling us what to do and, you know, wanting us to do that, because I find that quite narcissistic, because I don't know why a God would want us to do that. But anyway, that's another topic. But yes, I remember that and I was like, ooh, triggered. But then I realized that's something for me to work on, and then, yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting how the book, you could read it from different perspectives. Like, are you reading it as a career development thing, or a relationship development thing, or maybe it's a enlightenment type thing? So I guess that different people are going to read it in a different way and at a different time in your life too, whether if you're trying to get a job or
exactly.
So that was kind of cool. Like, I found myself I was thinking about it in the career sense.
See, and that's the interesting part, because that's such a good point, because those 4 agreements actually touch base on everything that you can, whatever you're going through life, you can go back to those 4 agreements and they can help you go back to point zero, neutralize and go, okay, let me check in with myself. Because 100%, I've read this book from over the past, from 17 to now, I've read it in different times and I can relate with that. It's every time I've read it, wherever I was at that time or where my consciousness was or where it shifts, it relates so differently. So that's why when I read it when I was 17, God was such a different expression to me. And I was like, oh, okay. And I felt like disconnected just at that last bit. And I was like, oh, okay, now he's talking about God. Then over time, when I realized my relationship with God and what it is to me, when I went and read that book, I was like, oh yeah, that makes sense to me. And I took it in a whole different way. And then I was able to implement new things from that book, because you always forget little bits and pieces. And then every time I revisit that book, you're like, oh, okay, that's interesting. I can implement something new into my life it's because I've shifted. You know, you shift and you change all the time. But yeah, that's a really good point, Nick.
To me, it was very personal. It was, you know, when he went into the dream state, when he started talking about the dream state, it was like, I liked how he reflected it to basically our reality.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like you're in your dream state, like when, you know, when we're in our dream state, we are away from society.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like you know, anyone who might have lucid dreamings or anything, you know, that's a whole different thing. But like, we're away from society. That's supposed to be the idea. So our reality is just us. Like no one else exists. And I was like, dang, that is so true. Like, you know, every other person that exists, every other human being is a perception of my reality.
Yeah, it's a dream. So that's why he's like there's
even,
the 2 dreams. Exactly. I love that you touched base on that.
Yeah. So it was even from the beginning, he capsulated me very personally. And from, you know, going through all the agreements, it was like it just brought visions of my childhood, visions of me now, of my business, workspace, how I present myself, my fears. And, you know, I just love that he really pushed self-confidence, even if he didn't really say have self-confidence, but he pushed like being yourself and, you know, just allowing yourself do you.
Yep.
Because that's one thing I preach all the time. And sometimes I feel in this world of conformity where, you know, a lot of people just want to be liked. You don't hear that as much. You don't hear people, even if it's being vulnerable, you know, I find it hard to be vulnerable with people, but like when it comes to just being myself, like, and just letting my personality flow, whether it's sad or angry, I can at least give myself like that validation reading this.
Wherever you want to take
at
it.
the end of the book, he talks about like, imagine that you can just be happy and enjoy your life. So go do that. But it's like, what element of that is just delusion, that you're just like, I'm happy now. Here I am. Like, I know that, you know, laugh and it releases those endorphins. But yeah, at what point, I don't know, that I found just like, oh, just decide to be great. Like,
no, I agree with you. I feel like you can't just, you know, wake up and go, you got to be realistic. You can't just get up and go, oh yeah, I'm fine, everything's fine. But it's more about, he's saying, when you're being impeccable with your word and when you actually do these 4 agreements consistently and you really implement them in your life consistently, and when I say consistently, as in like you're always actively trying to put them in there. No one has a consistent life. Everyone's, you know, we live in a, you know, different reality to that. So yeah, 100%. It's hard. Like, you know, you're not just going to be like, oh, I'm happy and then kabang, I'm happy. It doesn't work that way. You know, there's other things that we need to go through, and that's, you know, talking to yourself, understanding why you're unhappy or why are you, and then, you know, that's being impeccable with your word. Also not making assumptions about and understanding like what's going on that it's making me like that, taking accountability, understanding that, and not taking things personally, and then you do your best because that all goes back to it. But then it's more like checkpoints of the more you do this, it becomes that practice. So more you practice it, the more life will be happier. That's why he's like, go out there and do, he's like saying, go out there, do those 4 agreements and be more consistent with them and see how much your life would be, because it gets easier and easier. With that saying that, I think we had, I loved your outtakes on this and your review. Like, I really appreciate it. And you ladies did, Adana and Britt, you absolutely nailed it on the head on so many points and the agreements. It was
perfecto. Thank you for reading it and joining us.
Yes, thank you, Nick, as well.
It's a great book.
Yes, yeah. I'm so glad we've come together to read this book.
Yeah, it was awesome.
It's great. And there's also the 5th agreement, so you can read that as well if you want. And he's got.
Can you give us a spoiler? What is the 5th agreement?
I won't give you a spoiler. I'll let you read it.
Oh, okay.
I'll let you read it.
A whole book on one agreement? God.
No, he changes it up a little bit. He changes up the book. But yes, thank you so much. Thank you all for tuning in.
Thank you.
And we will catch you in the next episode.
Yeah.
All right. It's Mace here. Goodbye, everyone. See you.
Thanks, Nick.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.